Hello, Maxim. Hello, Irina. Greetings from across the ocean. So, our first conference, I want to hold on a topic that will open for us many incomprehensible and interesting things. In particular, crop circles. Ira, who is with us now?
We have with us a representative of planet Burkhad, Ramali Triar, who on her planet is a specialist in external and internal energy interactions of matter and energy. In Earth language, it is something like our physicist.
This is very interesting and just what we need in our conference today. The conference will be on crop circles. They look like this. It is believed to be the most complex fractal figure, which appeared in 1997 in England. It's called jock fractals. That's what they were called. They were in that field. I want to start with this phrase, which is quite popular. Those who believe don't need proof. And for those who do not believe, it is useless to prove something. Therefore, today we will begin with evidence to that category of people who are sane and can listen to our evidence. Their Ramtian said that he had no moral right to explain absolutely everything because crop circles are not created by only one civilization. Is that correct, Irina?
Yes,
Ram Tian's explanation is that this is some kind of psychological test that extraterrestrial civilizations are conducting on us, Earthlings. How do we react to them? We don't understand the nature of this test. Can Ira explain to us what this psychological test is?
Rameli, what do you think Raum Tian meant when he talked about the psychological test in relation to the formation of crop circles?
psychological tests are known very many kinds to detect different types of characters, pathology, development, etc. What you call crop circles is what is known as the drawing test, which is widespread in terrestrial psychology. These are figures denoting symbols of certain structures, either galaxies or symbols of planets or the internal structure of atoms and molecules, and many, many different other things, which are drawn on the surface of the planet by a special type of electromagnetic fields. In order to see the level of development of consciousness and intellect of those who will make assumptions about their meaning.
Oh my.
Yeah.
There is such an incomprehensible situation in this picture. Circles on the fields are very large, can be up to 100 meters. It is practically very hard to see them from the ground. What was the point of creating them in the 17th century when people did not fly and the view from above could not be understood anyway?
The thing is that the absence of flying machines in those or other centuries of your history did not mean that people of your civilization, for whom these tests were intended, could not fly in ancient times. It was meant for those, in your terminology, travelers in spirit who could leave their bodies and see the earth from above. And plus, for those plasmoid civilizations that are also considered part of your planet, that is, Earth plasmoids. Tests are being conducted for them as well.
We are not alone here as physical bodies. There are plasmoid civilizations, which are also considered to be part of the earth.
Earthlings.
Spirits of nature of spirits are the same. Spirits of water, spirits of fire, something else. This is the subtle material worlds with an embodied spirit in it. Therefore, these crop circles are not only for us,
I get that parallel.
for everyone on earth.
I realize that for you, Earth people, the spirits of nature of spirits are rather a funny folklore than a reality. But nevertheless, for those space civilizations which conduct research activities here, everything is much more serious. Many civilizations come to Earth just for contact, not so much with your humanoid form, but with plasmoid civilizations.
Yeah, but the question was a little different. I said that,
So yes, the question was, are you perceived as one?
yeah.
You are perceived as inhabitants of the planet Earth, both plasmoids and humanoids. Those spirits who go to incarnation on this planet are perceived as a whole. Those who are sent specifically to Earth, they are separated by density.
So for them, we are one and the same, regardless of the fact that we do not recognize plasmoids and spirits. It goes like this.
For many years, the inhabitants of one country, for example, Israel, did not recognize the inhabitants of North America or the territory of modern Russia. But it does not mean that they were not for us a single civilization of Earthlings.
This opens new questions, but I don't want to go off topic, although it is very interesting. It turns out that we should ask questions how we can unite into a single civilization, regardless of the difference in our physical stay on Earth, right? We still have to open this topic.
It is still very early for you to talk about unification with plasmoid civilizations. Your first stage is to unite in one spirit with all countries. I mean, not in a political, not in an economic sense, but in a spiritual sense, when any military conflict will be impossible.
Social. Yes, this is the most pressing agenda. On the screen, a map with dots, circles in the margins. Now, another question, very interesting for our listeners. Here is a map of the United States. It is clear that here shows the middle of Canada, the state of Montana, where there is no one. It turns out that the crop circles are drawn here, where there is no one at all. And to whom are they drawn? So again, the question resonates.
Your modern technology, flying machines, can now record these artifacts anywhere on Earth.
Maybe.
And now the question of placing these symbols on the surface of your planet depends rather on the remoteness of this or that place from the base of extraterrestrial civilization located on your planet, and on the convenience of our ships visiting this or that place. Ours. I mean, not specifically Burkhard, but the interstellar union.
And there is one more sub-question. There are a lot of crop circles in England, America, Netherlands. But it turns out, if we take by quantity, they are more created in the Western world. I do not have a picture of their distribution. In particular, all complex ones were created in England. Is there a pattern here? Why not in Russia, but more are created in Western countries?
Yes. There is a regularity, which depends, first of all, on the fact that the territory of different countries is supervised by the bases of different civilizations of the interstellar union, which treat the topic of creation of these symbols quite differently. Simply put, the governments of some planets are willing to invest more money, time, and human resources into the creation of these symbols, while others are less willing. They are more willing to direct their attention energetically or otherwise to contactees.
I see. That's very interesting, too. We're trying to open up this topic in the meantime. The questions I'm asking now are from the community, not my own. Not that people agonize over them, but they are constantly trying to answer them. For example, since the late 70s, when the strong monitoring began, there have been over 10,000 images of all sorts, better called figures or circles. For all that, our understanding of those 10,000 is small. Maybe one or two we understood. One in 1,000 of 1%. Again, the same, maybe dumb question. If we're so dumb and don't understand, what's the point of creating 10,000?
The way to the unraveling of this or that symbol is not less, and even, I will say, more interesting for us than the unraveling itself. The very way of unraveling, the way of thought operations made by your scientists and ordinary people, assuming this or that meaning, variants of appearance of these figures, the discussion itself, it not only gives us a better understanding of your character and the forces distributed in your society, but these circles and information themselves are already changing your society.
Good assignment for us. There's a question about the unusual. In England, in July 1996, during one day at white light, 151 formations appeared. Not only that, people watched them form. She may not be aware of it, but I wonder why they are suddenly so active. What could it possibly be related to?
Are you wondering why so many appeared in one place, or how humans could not notice the ships that formed them?
No, I'm interested in what triggered it more. Why is it like this? No. And then 1 in 151. What was the trigger? What was the key? Why was it necessary?
The point is that not only figures, not only patterns are a test. The very location, their quantity, and speed of appearance is also a certain test for you. As different scientists engaged in Earth psychology form different theories, discuss them in the field, so to say.
Then there's the question of location. I've scrolled backwards, brought up the photo. This fractal appeared near Stonehenge in England. Is there any connection to Stonehenge?
She says that this figure in the shape of what she saw is quite famous in the interstellar union. It marks with one sign the purpose of that Stonehenge that the ancients built.
Ah, well, that's very interesting.
These diminishing circles and joining at one point speak of the purpose not even of Stonehenge itself, but of the very portal passage it created. And how to turn it on, it's all drawn here.
All right, Let's move on to the next question. Sometimes it's a question, sometimes you want to hear a comment. This is a very interesting fact. In 1998, in the town of Butte, Montana, that's where I showed you, on 15 hectares, that's 150 acres, Pine trees were bent to the ground. They weren't grasses, they weren't flowers, and were unbroken. So can you imagine 15 ha of land with pine trees bent over? Nothing happened. No wind, no storm. Is this fact known?
Do you realize that the force that bends and twists grass stems in different directions acts in such a way? It temporarily makes the place of bending soft, one can say liquid. Atoms in this place begin to vibrate faster. Because of the protection of the special field, this happens without raising the temperature so that these herbs are not scorched. The same thing, but with more energy, can be done with trees.
Yeah. Let's go to this one. That's how they curl up in this manner. This is one of the twisting. Next question in the background. Where they twist in the middle of the ear, it creates some bloating. It doesn't break. Gnats have been recorded on these ears, as if they were attached to them. Some of them were dead, others were frozen in a catatonic stupor. When people picked them up and pulled them off the ear, the gnats would fly away. But not all of them. Some of them die. I wonder what the consequence is when some organisms die and some don't. It makes for an interesting post facto like that. Although Shiremli said it's the solid going to liquid. That's understandable.
The thing is that those living organisms, which are at this moment in these places, are also exposed to this field. Because of the inhomogeneity of the electromagnetic field itself, what happens is that one of your insects is affected more strongly, and they can no longer recover, and others are affected more weakly, and they can live for a while after that. Because of the electromagnetic field, there is a disruption of the physical structure of the insects, their molecules.
That's great. So here's another follow-up question. When we examined the soil after the formation of the crop circles, we found several substances. The first is silicon dioxide, which is our silica sand powder, perfectly shaped 50-micron balls. Silicon dioxide, 50-micron balls in the soil. The second thing, elevated amounts of magnesium oxide. The third material, which is called magnetite, that's magnetic ironstone, we think composition. Now, when they analyzed the soil inside the circle and next to it, the percentage of these three substances inside the circles exceeded 1,000%. So the question, this ball, which I'll ask another question about, it's white and yellow. Is it getting underneath it still emitting these elements away?
Magnetic field, which I said, affects the plant and soil nearby. And naturally, according to the law of transformation of some energies into others, it is quite possible that the same magnesium can pass from the plant into the soil and create there oxides, polyoxides, monoxides, etc.
So there's a transmutation of the elements?
Yes, the atoms of one element start to change into another because the magnetic field starts to change everything.
Ramelli, when forming crop circles, what energies are more present?
The type of engine that generates these energies is the planetary engine, which operates on the magnetic field principle of attraction and repulsion from magnetic fields. If necessary, the intra-atmospheric engine, which operates on the suppression of gravitational energy, is turned on. The energy forming the circles themselves is, actually, it can be different because depending on the shape, the size of the circle, the type of ship, finally, there can be both magnetic fields and electric fields and different ratios of them. Even the gravitational field can vary. Light and radio waves can be used. Almost every kind of radiation known to you can be recorded.
That is, depending on the civilization that does it and its technologies, different kinds of energy can be used to form these circles on the fields.
There's a lot to talk about and a lot to ask, but we won't get distracted and we'll move on to the next slide. Displays two photos. It shows, you see here, a circle in the field that was taken, one photo, and a year later, two photos. The effect has been noticed that where the circle was, things grow better the next year. Are they aware of this effect? And what is the explanation?
Any soil, in any place, on any surface, consists of a structure of internal capillaries that allow water to pass through, and in their turn consist of. Now I will give an example. The soil itself is made up of one substance or another, which contains in one ratio or another plant nutrients and so on. And all this changes under the influence of energies that form circles. From the very stems of plants, at the transformation of which this twisting is possible, those substances pass into the soil, and substances in the soil itself change. Nutrients become more accessible for dissolving in water, for example, and being assimilated by plants. This has the effect that there will be more. The growth and development of the green mass on certain fields is accelerated. Even the amount of nitrogen compounds is higher in those places because partly the nitrogen that is in the atmosphere is transferred to those compounds that are in the soil, because under the influence of electromagnetic fields, it is almost impossible to avoid this effect.
Yes, impossible, because our air is almost 77% nitrogen.
Yes, the lower atmosphere, and even those surrounding rocks, even those insects that were there already from their structure, some molecules can transfer. Even an insect that air, for example, or some microorganisms from their structure elements can change into some organic compounds. They can be transformed into the composition of the soil.
So immediately the following comment, not a question. Questions a little later. The comment is as follows. Anomalies have been noticed that if the circles on the fields appeared before the formation of seeds, for example, wheat, then the seeds are not formed there anymore. But if the circle occurred while the seeds were already forming, they grow very quickly. That's just a comment. And here is a comment with a question. The witnesses who saw these patterns forming, again, Cece, we know, they noticed a whistling, hissing sound. It was white, yellow, flying circles, such orbs, balls. And then there's a popping, a sound like a power line. It's clear that there's some kind of ionization going on, and there's likely to be a large electric field strength. It turns out, she said, we have a ship flying. It turns out, launches plasma balls.
The thing is, underneath these plasma balls, it's a protective plasma field.
What, again?
You just see balls flying, yellow, white. Actually, they can be red or any color. These are protective plasma fields of flying vehicles.
Or,
Either those flying machines or devices that you would probably call alien probes, which, following an automatic program, fly and create these circles. Because many civilizations do not want to risk their pilots and send not pilots, not ships, but mini apparatuses to draw circles, which can only create energy, twist it in the necessary way to form a figure, and to avoid getting hit by your military forces that could damage the ship.
is the ship itself far away, or can't we see it?
If it is a ship, that is, if it is a ball with a diameter of at least 5 to 6 meters, it means that inside, most likely, there is a flying machine, a mini discolate, so-called. It creates a plasma field around itself. And if it's smaller circles, the ship itself could be on its base. It could be outside the Earth's atmosphere or anywhere, because it's not radio-controlled. It's largely automated.
Wonderful, wonderful. That explains a lot, though not everything. So let's move on to the next comment. I'm just commenting more for those people who are going to be watching and won't know what it's about. There was a reported effect on people. Some people's rheumatism went away completely. Some people slept very well. Some people had a lot of energy after visiting the circle. But a very interesting effect was when a whole tour bus came to see this field. A few minutes later, all the people from the bus fell asleep. How does it affect a person? Why some people recover, some with energy, but the bus fell asleep?
These electromagnetic fields affect the energies of space itself. First of all, living organisms, the more reasonable organisms, react to it. That is, spirits embodied in a physical body that have their own energy and electromagnetic field. They react to these charged systems because the electromagnetic field doesn't just go away. It stays in that place, in the structure of the plants, the soil itself, and changes the spatial energies around the experience itself. What is not in the atmosphere, but deeper than the atmosphere itself, i.e. the very free energy of the vacuum, etc., which is already the boundary, as Ram Tian said, between the material world and the spiritual world. And it is already reacted to, first of all, by those intelligent embodied spirits who come to this place, because they have their own aura, their own energy. So when they interact with the energy of the aircrafts that were there and formed the drawings, they can react differently depending on their own vibrations, on their attitude to all this. That is, if they have rejection, they may not feel good. If they have full acceptance, these energies begin to act on the principle of resonance, to bring the organs of the physical body into harmony in waves. The thing is that these energies can act very differently on different people. Those energies, which are in the already created circles, have not gone anywhere. They are present there, but they can be felt. They can be felt in the physical body of a person sensitive to various changes of energies. How they will affect you, health improving or depressing, it largely depends on the energy structure of a person, which in turn depends on the orientation of his consciousness.
We're taking everyone with a good consciousness at the same time?
Not even someone selects people, but these energies themselves, coming into interaction with auras, bioenergetic structures of different people, bring different effects, one can say so. Stimulating to some, stimulating to others.
Yes, for some these energies will be beneficial, and for others, respectively, destructive. That's probably why it's impossible to invent a device that will help everyone, really.
There was such a case, I think, in England when people came to a wheat field. They took wheat from the inside of the circle, then drove away and took other samples of wheat. There were already grains there in order to germinate and see the effect. When we got home, we left both in the barn. When we returned to the barn a couple of days later to do the experiment, we saw that the mice had eaten the wheat that had not been irradiated. That is, those grains from the circles they didn't touch, but they ate all the other stuff. Another remark of people who took cooked wheat from a circle formed when the wheat was already mature fits into the same theme. That when they baked bread from this wheat, it had a very unpleasant smell and taste. I realize that Ira has already explained this, but maybe some more comments.
On the part of those civilizations and those pilots who formed these circles, this is a random effect. It is caused by a change in the internal structure, in this case of the plant proteins that made up the structure of these grains. Because denaturation of protein occurs in any case, whether plant or animal, which is directly in the zone of circle formation at the moment of its creation. This effect is largely unpredictable, because different plants during the period of growth and development react to these energies in completely different ways. The results that may occur may be quite unusual for humans. That is, the chemical composition of these particular proteins may change.
Anyway, it's not very useful, is it?
This is a random effect, and it is almost impossible to avoid it with types of energy and the rate of formation that we have.
I see. In conclusion, I would like to say this comment. Our celestial friends will be interested to know this, or maybe they already know it. The government here suppresses this knowledge in every possible way. Not only that, they form circles of people, not crop circles, who are exactly engaged in all kinds of fakes. In 1998, the American media corporation NBC sponsored 3 people, gave them money to fly far away to New Zealand, make circles there, and then take it all off the plane. When the actual researchers came in and asked to investigate this stuff, we want to know this, where this is formed. They, understandably, gave no coordinates, nothing, because these effects that we talked about were understandably not there. Second, the most remote, sparsely populated place in New Zealand was chosen to do all this. Then it was all put out to the media, the TVs, and said, yes, we did it, and everybody around here is doing it. But they invited, and indeed a specialist. And there was an embarrassment. What happened was that they couldn't prove that it was real. He said, then provide us with copies. They said there are no copies, and we will not tell you where it is, what it is, and how. That's in conclusion. So I wanted to tell you that, on the contrary, from our earthly side, everything is done to discredit this case in every possible way. I think that we have done a lot, in particular, and in this program we have interested you, dear friends, precisely because it's a serious matter. These circles, and this circle in particular, are hundreds of meters. It is not a meter. Can you imagine 15 hectares of land? It's 1.5 kilometers by 1.5 kilometers. I want to see how they do it.
Ramelli puts it this way. The fact is that the very mechanism of formation of these circles and the changes that are taking place in the plants and around them, and in the energies and even their location as a test, they should already tell your scientists that extraterrestrial civilizations really exist.
Look at this, a circle, a Merkaba, and at the ends of the Merkaba is another Merkaba.
Yeah, there's already some stars in there. If the circle will be made by earthly people, the obligatory and main difference will be that if to look from above, from this circle the road on which they left or departed will be visible.
Yes, I'd like to make an observation too. First of all, they are made in the snow so that it is impossible to identify at all. Everyone who made these fakes did them on wheat because it's easy to camouflage their footprints. But circles are made on carrot crops, potato crops, that is, where there are small sprouts and when it is impossible to hide the traces inside and outside. And all these fakes, which are trying to repeat, are made exactly on ripe wheat.
And even what is done on the ripened wheat can be distinguished, because still, no matter how you do not mask, but you can distinguish the trace where you left. And moreover, the very size and complexity of this figure, the speed of its appearance, will say that it could not be done by your technology.